Welcome, dear traveler, to a journey beneath the canopy of time itself. Tonight, we venture into the ancient forests, those cathedral groves where silence speaks in whispers of centuries, where roots intertwine in conversations older than human memory, where every breath of wind carries stories written in the language of leaves and soil. Here, in this space between waking and dreaming, we'll explore the hidden networks that pulse beneath our feet, the intricate web of life that connects every tree, every fungus, every creature in a symphony of existence that has played since long before we learned to listen. Let yourself settle now. Feel the weight of your body against whatever surface holds you. Notice how gravity gently pulls you down, down, like roots seeking the earth. Your breath, soft, natural, like the slow exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between leaf and air. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. Just this moment, just this breath, just this gentle invitation to wander with me into the forest of understanding, where science and wonder dance together beneath ancient boughs. The ancient forests we'll explore tonight are not merely collections of old trees. They are living libraries, repositories of ecological wisdom accumulated over hundreds, sometimes thousands of years. When we speak of ancient forests, we're speaking of ecosystems that have developed without significant human disturbance for at least 150 to 200 years, though many have stood far longer. These are the old-growth forests, the primary forests, the places where nature has written its longest, most complex sentences in the grammar of growth and decay, life and death, connection and interdependence. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of such a forest. Perhaps it's the temperate rainforests of the Pacific Northwest, where Douglas firs and western red cedars tower 300 feet into mist-laden air. Or maybe it's the ancient beech forests of Europe, where trees planted in the time of medieval kingdoms still spread their silver-barked branches. It could be the old-growth eucalyptus forests of Australia, or the ancient oak woodlands of England, or the primeval forests of Baia Oia 1/4A that straddle the border between Poland and Belarus, one of the last remnants of the vast forest that once covered the European plain. Wherever your mind places you, notice the quality of light. In ancient forests, light becomes something different, something softer. The dense canopy filters and fractures sunlight into 1,000 shades of green and gold, creating what forest ecologists call a light mosaic. Only about 1 to 2% of the sunlight that strikes the top of the canopy in a mature old-growth forest reaches the forest floor. This creates layers, stratifications of life adapted to different intensities of illumination. The canopy layer, where the crowns of the tallest trees spread their leaves to drink in sunshine. The understory, where smaller trees and saplings wait patiently for their chance, sometimes for decades, sometimes for a century or more. The shrub layer, adapted to dimmer conditions. And finally, the forest floor, that rich carpet of moss and fern and decomposing matter, where only the most shade-tolerant plants can thrive. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's begin at the beginning, with the whispers of how such forests come to be. Every ancient forest begins with a disturbance. This might seem paradoxical, but it's one of nature's profound truths. Whether it's a fire that clears the land, a windstorm that topples old giants, a glacier that retreats, leaving bare ground behind, or simply an abandoned field slowly reclaimed by nature, the journey toward an ancient forest begins with an opening, a blank page upon which ecological succession will write its slow, patient story. Imagine, if you will, a clearing. Perhaps a century and a half ago, a fire swept through this place. Not a catastrophic fire, but one of those periodic burns that forests have experienced for millennia, part of the natural rhythm of renewal. The flames consumed the understory, scorched the bark of larger trees, cleared away decades of accumulated debris. And then, in the silence after the fire, something remarkable began. The first arrivals are the pioneers, the colonizers, the species adapted to harsh conditions and full sunlight. In many temperate forests, these might be species like lodgepole pine or aspen, trees that can germinate in exposed soil, that grow quickly, and that don't require the shelter of other trees. Their seeds, carried on the wind or cached by animals, find purchase in the ash-enriched soil. Within a year, tiny seedlings emerge, their first leaves unfurling to capture the abundant sunlight that now reaches the ground. Let your breath slow as you imagine this process. With each inhale, a seed germinates. Each exhale, roots pushing down into the soil. There's no hurry here. These seedlings grow at their own pace, responding to the rhythm of seasons, the availability of water, and the nutrients in the soil. Some will survive. Many will not. This is the way of forests, this patient sorting, this gentle selection. As decades pass, these pioneer trees grow. They're not the giants that will eventually dominate this forest, but they serve a crucial role. Their roots stabilize the soil, preventing erosion. Their fallen needles or leaves begin to build up organic matter, enriching the earth. Their branches provide perches for birds, who deposit seeds from other plant species in their droppings. Their shade begins to modify the microclimate beneath them, making it cooler, more humid, more hospitable to species that couldn't survive in the harsh conditions of the immediate post-disturbance environment. This is what ecologists call primary succession, when it occurs on bare ground, or secondary succession, when it happens in a place where soil and some vegetation already exist. It's a process that unfolds over decades and centuries, a slow dance of species replacing species, each preparing the way for the next, like a relay race run in geological time. Beneath the soil, invisible to any casual observer, something equally important is happening. Fungi are colonizing the root systems of these young trees. These are mycorrhizal fungi, from the Greek words myko meaning fungus and rhiza meaning root. They form intimate associations with tree roots, wrapping around them or even penetrating into the root cells themselves, creating a biological partnership that is absolutely fundamental to forest life. There are two main types of these partnerships: ectomycorrhizal fungi, which form a sheath around the outside of fine roots and are common in temperate and boreal forests, associate with trees like pines, oaks, and beeches; and arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, which actually penetrate into root cells, forming tree-like structures called arbuscules, and are more common in tropical forests and with certain temperate species. But we'll explore these relationships more deeply later. For now, just hold the image of these invisible threads beginning to spread through the soil, connecting root to root, tree to tree, creating the first whispers of the network that will eventually span the entire forest. 50 years pass. The pioneer trees are now mature, some beginning to show signs of age. Beneath them, a new generation has taken root. These are the species that will eventually dominate the ancient forest, the shade-tolerant climax species. In the Pacific Northwest, these might be western hemlock and western red cedar, growing slowly in the dappled shade beneath the pioneer canopy. In eastern North American forests, they might be sugar maple and American beech. In European forests, perhaps European beech and silver fir. These trees grow more slowly than the pioneers, but they have time. They're adapted to wait, to persist in low light conditions, to grow steadily year after year. Some saplings might remain in the understory for a century or more, barely growing, just maintaining themselves, waiting for an opening in the canopy above. And openings come. A pioneer tree, perhaps weakened by disease or damaged by a storm, falls. Suddenly, a shaft of sunlight penetrates to the forest floor. The waiting saplings respond, accelerating their growth, racing upward to fill the gap. This is gap phase dynamics, one of the key processes that maintains diversity in ancient forests. Different species respond differently to gaps of different sizes, creating a complex mosaic of ages and species across the forest landscape. 100 years after the initial disturbance, the forest is in transition. The pioneer species are dying, their relatively short lifespans coming to an end. As they fall, they create more gaps, more opportunities. The longer-lived climax species are now reaching the canopy, their crowns spreading wide to capture light. The forest is becoming more complex, more layered, more diverse. Take a deep breath here. Feel how your body has settled even more deeply into rest as we've traced this slow unfolding. Your heartbeat, steady and calm, like the patient growth of trees. Your thoughts, perhaps drifting like seeds on the wind, settling where they will. This is good. This is exactly right. 150 years, 200 years. The forest is now approaching what ecologists would classify as old growth or ancient forest. The pioneer species are largely gone, their role complete. Long-lived climax species dominate the canopy, some now reaching truly impressive sizes. But it's not just the age of the trees that defines an ancient forest. It's the complexity, the structural diversity, the accumulation of features that only time can create. Large standing dead trees, called snags, punctuate the canopy. These are crucial habitat for cavity nesting birds, for bats, for countless insects. Fallen logs in various stages of decay litter the forest floor, serving as nurse logs for new seedlings, as habitat for salamanders and small mammals, as slow-release reservoirs of nutrients. The canopy itself is no longer a uniform layer but a complex three-dimensional structure with multiple layers, gaps, and variations in height. And beneath the ground, the mycorrhizal network has matured into something extraordinary. The fungal threads, called hyphae, now extend through the soil in a dense web, connecting tree to tree, creating what some scientists have called the wood wide web. This network, as we'll explore in much greater detail, allows trees to share resources, to communicate, to support each other in ways that are only beginning to be understood by science but have been suspected by careful observers of forests for generations. This is the foundation, the beginning, the gentle precursor phase that sets the stage for everything that follows. The ancient forest doesn't spring into being fully formed. It emerges slowly, patiently, through the accumulation of time and process, through succession and replacement, through the gradual building of complexity upon complexity. Let your awareness rest here for a moment, in this understanding of beginnings. Notice how your breath continues, steady and automatic, like the processes of the forest. Notice how you don't have to try to breathe, don't have to force it. The body knows. The forest knows. There's a wisdom in these automatic processes, these patient unfoldings. As the forest matures beyond its second century, something remarkable happens. The pace of change slows, but the complexity deepens. If the early stages of forest development are like the opening movements of a symphony, with themes being introduced and developed, then the ancient forest is like the full orchestra playing together, every instrument contributing to a sound that is far greater than the sum of its parts. The trees themselves become monuments to time. In temperate rainforests of the Pacific Northwest, Douglas firs can live for 700 to 1,000 years, reaching heights of 300 feet and diameters of 10 to 15 feet. Western red cedars can live even longer, with some individuals estimated at over 1,000 years old. In the ancient oak forests of Europe, individual trees can reach 600 to 1,000 years of age. In the eucalyptus forests of Australia, some species can live for 500 years or more. But it's not just longevity that matters. It's what happens to these trees as they age. Young trees are relatively simple structures, essentially a trunk with branches and leaves. But ancient trees become ecosystems unto themselves. Their bark becomes deeply furrowed, creating habitat for insects, spiders, and other invertebrates. Lichens and mosses colonize their trunks and branches. Some species are found nowhere else but in the canopy of old-growth forests. In the temperate rainforests, the branches of ancient trees can accumulate so much soil and organic matter that other plants, including small trees, can actually grow in the canopy, creating what are called canopy gardens. Imagine yourself now as a tiny creature, small enough to explore the surface of an ancient tree trunk. The bark is not a smooth surface but a landscape of ridges and valleys, caves and overhangs. In the crevices, moisture accumulates, creating microhabitats. A spider has spun its web in the shelter of a bark fold. A beetle larva tunnels through the outer layers of dead bark, creating galleries that will later be used by other insects. A tiny mite, invisible to the naked eye, grazes on fungal spores. This is a world within a world, a complexity that only emerges with time. Let your breath continue its gentle rhythm as we zoom back out, taking in the forest as a whole. The canopy of an ancient forest is not a uniform layer but a complex three-dimensional structure. Some trees, the emergents, rise above the general canopy level, their crowns fully exposed to sun and wind. These are often the oldest individuals, the survivors, the ones that won the competition for light decades or centuries ago. Below them, the main canopy forms a more continuous layer, though even here there are variations in height, gaps where trees have fallen, places where the canopy is denser or more open. And these variations matter. They create different microclimates, different light conditions, different moisture levels. A study in old-growth forests of the Pacific Northwest found that the temperature could vary by as much as 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit between the forest floor and the upper canopy on a sunny day. Humidity levels show similar variation. This creates a multitude of ecological niches, places where different species can specialize, contributing to the overall diversity of the forest. The understory in an ancient forest has a particular quality, a sense of spaciousness that's different from younger forests. In a young, dense forest, the understory can be choked with vegetation, every tree competing intensely for the limited light. But in an ancient forest, the canopy is high enough and open enough that some light filters through, and the understory often has a more open, park-like quality. Shade-tolerant shrubs and herbs carpet the ground. Ferns unfurl their fronds in the dim light. Mosses create thick cushions on logs and rocks. This is where you might encounter some of the most specialized species of the ancient forest. The marbled murrelet, a seabird that nests only on the large, moss-covered branches of old-growth trees in the Pacific Northwest. The northern spotted owl, which requires large territories of old-growth forest with complex structure for hunting. The fisher, a member of the weasel family that needs large hollow trees for denning. These species are indicators of ancient forest conditions, unable to survive in younger, simpler forests. But let's descend further, down to the forest floor, and then below it, into the soil itself. This is where some of the most important processes of the ancient forest occur, hidden from view but absolutely fundamental to everything above. The soil of an ancient forest is a remarkable substance. It's not just dirt, not just broken down rock. It's a living matrix, teeming with organisms. A single teaspoon of forest soil can contain billions of microorganisms, more than there are people on Earth. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, mites, springtails, and countless other creatures live out their lives in the spaces between soil particles, in the films of water that coat those particles, in the organic matter that accumulates from fallen leaves and dead roots. This community of soil organisms performs functions that are absolutely essential to the forest. They decompose organic matter, breaking down complex molecules into simpler forms that can be taken up by plant roots. They cycle nutrients, transforming nitrogen from the air into forms that plants can use, releasing phosphorus from rock particles, and moving minerals from deep in the soil to the surface. They create soil structure, binding particles together into aggregates that allow both water and air to penetrate, creating the porous, crumbly texture of healthy forest soil. And they interact with plant roots in ways that are only beginning to be fully understood. We've already mentioned mycorrhizal fungi, but the relationships go far deeper. Some bacteria form nodules on the roots of certain plants, fixing nitrogen from the air. Other bacteria produce hormones that stimulate plant growth. Some fungi protect roots from pathogens. The rhizosphere, the zone of soil immediately surrounding roots, is a hotspot of biological activity, a place where plants and microorganisms engage in complex chemical conversations. In an ancient forest, these soil communities have had centuries to develop, to become more diverse, more interconnected, more efficient. The soil itself is deeper, richer in organic matter, more stable than in younger forests. Studies have shown that old-growth forests can have significantly more soil carbon than younger forests, representing centuries of accumulated organic matter. This carbon storage is one of the many ecosystem services that ancient forests provide, helping to moderate global climate by keeping carbon out of the atmosphere. Take a moment here to appreciate the depth of what we're exploring. Beneath your awareness, your body is performing countless functions, cells metabolizing, neurons firing, blood circulating. You don't have to think about any of it. It happens automatically, the result of billions of years of evolution, of systems building upon systems. The ancient forest is similar, a product of centuries of development, of species interacting and adapting, of systems becoming more complex and more integrated over time. Let your body sink a little deeper into rest. Feel the support beneath you, solid and reliable, like the earth beneath the forest. Your breath continues, soft and steady. Your mind can wander where it will, following these threads of understanding, or drifting into its own quiet spaces. Both are welcome here. The gathering intensity of the ancient forest is not about drama or sudden change. It's about the accumulation of relationships, the deepening of connections, the building of complexity upon complexity. It's about how a forest becomes more than just a collection of trees, becoming instead an integrated system where every part affects every other part, where the whole is genuinely greater than the sum of its parts. And at the heart of this integration, quite literally at the heart, running through the soil like a nervous system, is the mycorrhizal network. This is what we'll explore next, descending into the hidden world beneath the forest floor, into the realm of fungi and roots, of chemical signals and shared resources, of connections that link every tree in the forest into a single, vast, living network. But before we descend, take 3 slow breaths. Breathe in the imagined scent of the forest, that complex aroma of earth and moss, of decomposing leaves and living wood, of moisture and growth. Hold it for just a moment. Then release, letting go of any tension, any effort. Again. Breathe in the forest. Hold. Release. One more time. Breathe in. Hold. And release, letting yourself settle even more deeply into this journey, into this exploration, into this gentle descent into understanding. Now we descend. Imagine yourself shrinking, becoming small enough to slip between soil particles to enter the hidden world beneath the forest floor. The light fades as we go deeper, but this is not a world of darkness. It's a world of chemical signals, of electrical impulses, of touch and taste and forms of sensing that have no human equivalent. This is the realm of roots and fungi, of bacteria and archaea, of the vast invisible network that underlies and supports everything above. Let's start with the roots themselves. When we think of a tree, we usually picture the part above ground, the trunk, the branches, the leaves. But below ground is an equally extensive system, a mirror image of the canopy, spreading through the soil in search of water and nutrients. For many trees, the root system represents as much biomass as the above-ground portion, sometimes even more. Tree roots serve multiple functions. They anchor the tree, providing stability against wind and gravity. They absorb water and dissolved nutrients from the soil. They store carbohydrates, providing reserves that the tree can draw on during times of stress or rapid growth. And they interact with soil organisms in ways that are fundamental to the tree's survival. The root system of a tree is not uniform. There are large structural roots, sometimes called cable roots, that extend outward from the base of the trunk, providing anchorage and serving as conduits for water and nutrients. These can extend surprisingly far, often well beyond the drip line of the canopy. In some species, structural roots can extend 2 to 3 times the radius of the canopy. but the real action happens in the fine roots, the small, delicate roots that branch and rebranch, creating an enormous surface area for absorption. These fine roots are ephemeral, living for only weeks or months before dying and being replaced. A single mature tree might have millions of fine root tips, representing hundreds of miles of total length. And it's these fine roots that form partnerships with mycorrhizal fungi. The word mycorrhiza, as we mentioned earlier, means fungus root, and it describes one of the most important symbiotic relationships in nature. The fungus colonizes the tree's roots, and in exchange for carbohydrates that the tree produces through photosynthesis, the fungus provides the tree with water and nutrients, particularly phosphorus and nitrogen, that it absorbs from the soil. This might sound like a simple exchange, but the reality is far more complex and far more fascinating. The fungus doesn't just absorb nutrients from the immediate vicinity of the root. It extends thread-like structures called hyphae out into the soil, creating a network that can extend for yards or even miles from the original root. These hyphae are incredibly fine, much finer than the finest roots, allowing them to penetrate into tiny soil pores that roots cannot access. They have an enormous surface area, vastly increasing the tree's effective absorptive capacity. A single gram of soil in an ancient forest might contain several miles of fungal hyphae. Extrapolate that across an entire forest, and you're talking about a network of almost incomprehensible extent, threading through the soil, connecting root to root, tree to tree, creating what mycologist Paul Stamets has called nature's internet. But the network does more than just absorb nutrients. Emerging research suggests it may also transfer them. And this is where things get really interesting. Because the mycorrhizal network doesn't just connect a fungus to a single tree. A single fungal individual can connect to multiple trees, and a single tree can be connected to multiple fungal species. The result is a web of connections linking all the trees in the forest. Through this web, resources may flow. Research using radioactive carbon tracers in the 1990s by forest ecologist Suzanne Umar and her colleagues showed that carbon could move between trees through mycorrhizal networks. They grew Douglas fir and paper birch seedlings together, allowed them to form mycorrhizal connections, and then labeled the carbon in one tree with a radioactive isotope. Within days, the labeled carbon appeared in the other tree, having traveled through the fungal network. However, it's important to note that recent scientific reviews have raised questions about the extent and ecological significance of this carbon transfer. While the existence of mycorrhizal networks is well established, and some resource transfer does occur, the amounts transferred are typically small. Studies suggest only about 1 to 3% of assimilated carbon may transfer through these networks. The debate continues in the scientific community about whether this transfer significantly benefits recipient trees or primarily serves the fungi themselves. What we do know with certainty is that mycorrhizal networks exist and connect trees. We know that some transfer of resources occurs, and we know that these networks are ancient. Mycorrhizal associations date back over 400 million years to the earliest land plants. Fossil evidence suggests that the first plants to colonize land did so in partnership with fungi. The mycorrhizal association may have been essential to that colonization, allowing plants to extract nutrients from primitive soils and survive in the harsh conditions of early terrestrial environments. Over the hundreds of millions of years since, the association has evolved and diversified. Different groups of fungi have formed partnerships with different groups of plants. The relationship has become more sophisticated, more integrated, more essential. Today, over 90% of land plant species form mycorrhizal associations. It's not an exaggeration to say that mycorrhizal fungi are one of the foundations of terrestrial life. In ancient forests, where the mycorrhizal network has had centuries to develop, the system reaches its peak of complexity and integration. The fungal network is more extensive, more diverse, more interconnected than in younger forests. This may be one of the keys to the resilience of ancient forests, their ability to withstand stress and disturbance. The network may allow resources to be redistributed from areas of abundance to areas of scarcity, creating a level of integration that buffers the forest against change. Take a slow breath here. Imagine that breath traveling not just into your lungs but spreading through your body. Oxygen diffusing into your bloodstream, carried to every cell. Your body, like the forest, is an integrated network, with systems for communication and resource distribution, with emergent properties that arise from the interaction of countless components. You don't have to think about any of it. It happens automatically, the result of millions of years of evolution, of systems building upon systems. The forest is the same. The mycorrhizal network operates automatically, without conscious direction, the result of millions of years of coevolution between plants and fungi. And yet it creates something remarkable, a forest where trees may support each other, where resources may be shared, where the community may be more resilient than any individual could be alone. But the mycorrhizal network is not the only underground connection. Tree roots can also graft together, creating direct physical connections between trees. This is most common between trees of the same species, but it can occur between different species as well. When roots of two trees come into contact underground, they can fuse, creating a living bridge through which water, nutrients, and even carbohydrates can flow directly from tree to tree, without the intermediary of fungi. Root grafting is common in ancient forests, where trees have had centuries to grow and their root systems have had ample opportunity to encounter each other. In some old-growth forests, researchers have found that most trees are connected to at least one other tree through root grafts, and some are connected to many others. This creates yet another layer of integration, another way that trees can support each other and share resources. There's even evidence that root grafts can keep stumps alive. When a tree is cut down, you might expect the stump to die, unable to photosynthesize without leaves. But in some cases, stumps remain alive for years or even decades, kept alive by carbohydrates flowing from neighboring trees through root grafts. The neighboring trees, in effect, support their fallen companion, sharing resources even though the stump can no longer contribute to the network. Why would trees do this? Why share resources with a stump that can no longer photosynthesize? One possibility is that the root graft formed long before the tree was cut, and the neighboring trees simply continue to share resources as they always have, unable to distinguish between a living tree and a stump. Another possibility is that keeping the stump's roots alive benefits the neighboring trees, perhaps by maintaining soil structure or by keeping the mycorrhizal network intact in that area. Whatever the reason, it's a striking example of the interconnectedness of forest trees, the way they function not as isolated individuals but as members of an integrated community. Let yourself sink deeper now, deeper into relaxation, deeper into this understanding of connection and interdependence. Your breath continues, soft and steady. Your body rests, supported and safe. And in your mind's eye, you can see the forest, above and below, the trees reaching toward the sky and their roots reaching into the earth, and beneath it all, the vast network of fungal threads, connecting everything, creating a living web of relationship and mutual support. This is the hidden architecture of the ancient forest, the foundation upon which everything else rests. And it's to this foundation that we'll return again and again as we continue our exploration, because understanding the mycorrhizal network is key to understanding how ancient forests function, how they maintain their resilience, how they create the conditions for the incredible diversity of life they support. But now, let's rise back up to the forest floor and explore some of that diversity, the countless other organisms that make the ancient forest their home, that depend on its complex structure and its accumulated resources, that contribute to its functioning in ways both obvious and subtle. Let's explore the life that intertwines in the ancient forest, the ecosystem interactions that make these places so rich, so vibrant, so full of wonder. The ancient forest is never silent. Even in the deepest stillness of a windless night, there is sound. The rustle of a small mammal moving through leaf litter, the call of an owl, the creak of a tree adjusting to temperature changes, the almost inaudible hum of countless insects. And during the day, the forest comes alive with a symphony of bird calls, the buzz of pollinators, the chatter of squirrels, the movement of deer through the understory. Each of these creatures is part of the forest's web of life, connected to every other part through relationships of predation, competition, mutualism, and countless other interactions. The ancient forest supports this diversity through its structural complexity, its accumulated resources, and the stability that comes from centuries of development. Let's explore some of these relationships, starting with one of the most visible and charismatic groups, the birds. Ancient forests support a remarkable diversity of bird species, many of which are found nowhere else. In the old-growth forests of the Pacific Northwest, over 150 bird species have been recorded, with at least 30 species strongly associated with old-growth conditions. These include the northern spotted owl, which requires large territories of old-growth forest with complex structure for hunting. The marbled murrelet, a seabird that nests only on the large, moss-covered branches of ancient trees. The pileated woodpecker, which excavates large cavities in dead trees for nesting and foraging. The varied thrush, whose haunting song is one of the signature sounds of the old-growth forest. Each of these species depends on specific features of ancient forests. The spotted owl hunts flying squirrels and other small mammals in the complex, multi-layered canopy of old growth, using its exceptional hearing to locate prey in the dim light beneath the canopy. The marbled murrelet needs large branches with moss platforms for nesting, features found only on ancient trees. The pileated woodpecker needs large snags and logs with heart rot, where it can excavate cavities and find the carpenter ants that are its primary food. The varied thrush forages in the deep leaf litter of the forest floor, which accumulates over centuries in undisturbed forests. But birds don't just depend on the forest. They also shape it. Woodpeckers excavating cavities create nest sites that are later used by dozens of other species, from small songbirds to flying squirrels to bats. Birds disperse seeds, carrying them far from parent trees and depositing them in their droppings, often in favorable germination sites. Birds control insect populations, with some species consuming thousands of insects per day during the breeding season. The forest and its birds have co-evolved, each shaping the other over millions of years. Let your awareness settle on this image, a pileated woodpecker, its red crest bright against the gray bark of a snag, hammering with powerful blows, excavating a cavity. Chips of wood fly with each strike. The sound echoes through the forest, a rapid drumming that can be heard hundreds of yards away. This is not just a bird finding food or creating a nest. This is a bird creating habitat that will be used by countless other creatures, playing a role in the forest ecosystem that extends far beyond its own immediate needs. Breathe with the rhythm of the woodpecker's drumming. In, out. In, out. Steady, purposeful, creating something with each breath, each moment. Now let's descend to the forest floor and explore the small mammals that are so crucial to forest functioning. Flying squirrels, deer mice, voles, shrews, chipmunks, these small creatures are incredibly abundant in ancient forests, with populations sometimes reaching hundreds of individuals per acre. They play multiple crucial roles in the ecosystem. Many small mammals are important dispersers of mycorrhizal fungi. The fruiting bodies of many mycorrhizal fungi grow underground, as truffles. These fungi depend on animals to dig them up and eat them, dispersing the spores in their droppings. Flying squirrels, in particular, are voracious truffle eaters, with truffles making up a large portion of their diet. As they move through the forest, they deposit spores in their droppings, inoculating tree roots with mycorrhizal fungi and helping to maintain the fungal network. This creates a beautiful three-way relationship. The trees provide carbohydrates to the fungi. The fungi provide nutrients to the trees and produce truffles. The squirrels eat the truffles and disperse the fungal spores, helping to maintain the network that benefits both trees and fungi. And the squirrels themselves benefit from the abundant food source. Each partner in this relationship depends on the others, and the relationship has been refined over millions of years of coevolution. Small mammals also play crucial roles in seed dispersal, soil mixing, and nutrient cycling. Chipmunks and mice cache seeds, and forgotten caches can become new trees. Voles and shrews, burrowing through the soil and leaf litter, mix organic matter into the mineral soil, accelerating decomposition and nutrient cycling. Their droppings add nutrients to the soil. Their burrows create channels for air and water movement. And small mammals are prey for a host of predators, from owls and hawks to weasels and bobcats. They represent a crucial link in the food web, converting plant material and fungi into animal protein that can be used by carnivores. In a very real sense, the small mammals of the forest floor are the engine that drives much of the ecosystem, converting the forest's primary productivity into forms that can be used by other animals. Take a moment to imagine the forest floor from the perspective of a deer mouse. The leaf litter is a landscape of hills and valleys, with fallen logs like mountain ranges. A mushroom is a towering structure, a potential food source. The scent of a weasel on the wind is a signal of mortal danger, triggering an immediate dash for cover. This is a world of constant vigilance, of quick movements and quicker decisions, of life lived at a rapid pace in the shadow of the ancient trees. Your breath continues, slow and steady, so much slower than the rapid breathing of a mouse, so much more relaxed. You are safe here, in this moment, in this exploration. Nothing threatens. Nothing demands. Just the gentle unfolding of understanding, the quiet appreciation of the forest's complexity. Let's move now to the insects, the most diverse group of animals in the forest, and arguably the most important. Insects fill every conceivable niche in the ancient forest. They pollinate flowers, ensuring the reproduction of countless plant species. They consume living plant tissue, acting as herbivores. They consume dead plant tissue, acting as decomposers. They prey on other insects. They are prey for birds, bats, and other insectivores. They create galls, mine leaves, bore through wood, sip nectar, drink sap, and engage in countless other ways of making a living. The diversity of insects in an ancient forest is staggering. A single old-growth tree can support hundreds of insect species, each specialized for a particular microhabitat or food source. Some insects live only in the canopy, never descending to the forest floor. Others live only in the soil or leaf litter. Some are found only on a single species of tree, or even on a single part of that tree, the leaves, or the bark, or the roots. This diversity is not just interesting from a naturalist's perspective. It's functionally important. Insects drive many of the key processes in the forest ecosystem. They are the primary consumers of plant material, converting it into forms that can be used by other animals. They are crucial pollinators, ensuring plant reproduction. They are decomposers, breaking down dead material and recycling nutrients. The forest would not function without them. And many insect species are found only in ancient forests, unable to survive in younger, simpler forests. These include species that depend on large snags in specific stages of decay, species that require the deep leaf litter that accumulates only in undisturbed forests, species that need the stable microclimates found only beneath an intact old-growth canopy. When ancient forests are lost, these species are lost with them. But let's not catalogue species. Let's instead appreciate the web of relationships, the way each species is connected to countless others through relationships of eating and being eaten, of competition and cooperation, of dependence and mutual benefit. Consider a single ancient Douglas fir. In its canopy, aphids sip sap from the needles, and ladybugs hunt the aphids. Spiders spin webs to catch flying insects. Caterpillars of various moth species consume the needles, and parasitic wasps lay their eggs in the caterpillars. Bark beetles bore through the bark, and woodpeckers excavate the bark to reach the beetles. Ants tend aphids for their honeydew and defend them from predators. Lichens grow on the branches, and tiny mites graze on the lichens. In the tree's root zone, root weevils consume fine roots, and ground beetles hunt the weevils. Fungus gnats lay their eggs in mushrooms, and the larvae consume the fungal tissue. Springtails graze on fungal hyphae in the soil. Centipedes hunt springtails. Pseudoscorpions hunt mites. The soil is a three-dimensional landscape of predator and prey, of herbivore and decomposer, of countless species interacting in countless ways. And all of this is just one tree. Multiply this by the thousands or tens of thousands of trees in an ancient forest, add in the shrubs and herbs and ferns and mosses, the snags and logs, the streams and seeps, and you begin to get a sense of the almost incomprehensible complexity of these ecosystems. Let this complexity wash over you like a wave. Don't try to hold onto it, to understand every detail. Just appreciate it, the way you might appreciate a piece of music without analyzing every note, or a sunset without understanding the physics of light scattering. The ancient forest is beautiful in its complexity, in its interconnectedness, in the way every part relates to every other part in an intricate dance that has been choreographed over millions of years of evolution. Your breath continues, in and out, simple and automatic. Your heartbeat continues, steady and reliable. These are complex processes too, involving countless cells and molecules and chemical reactions, but you don't have to think about them. They happen automatically, the result of systems that have been refined over millions of years. The forest is the same, complex beyond full comprehension, but functioning beautifully, automatically, the result of systems that have been refined over millions of years of evolution and centuries of development in this particular place. Now let's consider the larger mammals, the deer and elk, the bears and cougars, the creatures that move through the forest on a larger scale, connecting different parts of the landscape, influencing the forest in ways both obvious and subtle. Deer and elk are browsers, consuming leaves and twigs and bark. In moderate numbers, they're part of the natural ecosystem, their browsing creating a more open understory, their droppings adding nutrients to the soil. But in high numbers, they can significantly impact forest regeneration, consuming tree seedlings and preventing the establishment of the next generation of trees. In many areas, deer populations have increased dramatically due to the elimination of predators and the creation of edge habitat, and their browsing pressure is one of the challenges facing forest regeneration. Bears, both black bears and grizzlies where they still exist, are omnivores, consuming everything from berries and nuts to insects and fish to occasional larger prey. They play important roles in seed dispersal, consuming fruits and depositing seeds in their droppings, often far from the parent plant. They also dig for roots and tubers, mixing the soil and creating small disturbances that can be colonization sites for new plants. Cougars and other large predators, where they still exist, play crucial roles in regulating prey populations and influencing prey behavior. The presence of predators can cause deer and elk to avoid certain areas or to move more frequently, reducing their impact on vegetation in any one place. This is sometimes called a landscape of fear, and it can have cascading effects throughout the ecosystem. But in many areas, large predators have been eliminated, and their absence has profound effects. Without predators, deer and elk populations can grow unchecked, overbrowsing vegetation and preventing forest regeneration. The loss of predators represents a loss of a key regulatory mechanism in the ecosystem, and restoring predators, where possible, is increasingly recognized as important for ecosystem health. These large mammals also connect the forest to other ecosystems. Salmon-eating bears in the Pacific Northwest carry nutrients from the ocean into the forest, depositing them in their droppings and in the carcasses of partially eaten fish. These marine-derived nutrients can be detected in the tissues of trees growing near salmon streams, representing a flow of nutrients from ocean to forest mediated by bears. Elk and deer migrate between summer and winter ranges, connecting high elevation and low elevation forests, moving nutrients and energy across the landscape. Imagine a black bear moving through the ancient forest, its powerful body moving with surprising grace and quiet. It pauses to overturn a log, licking up the ants and beetles exposed. It rises on its hind legs to reach a branch laden with berries, stripping them off with its lips and tongue. It digs at the base of a tree, excavating a truffle, consuming it in a few bites. The bear is not just taking from the forest. It's also giving, mixing the soil, dispersing seeds and fungal spores, adding nutrients through its droppings, creating small disturbances that will become microhabitats for other species. Let your breath deepen slightly, like the bear's breath, powerful and steady. Feel the strength in your own body, the way it supports you without effort, the way it functions automatically, requiring no conscious direction. You are, in your own way, like the bear, like the forest, a complex system that functions beautifully without conscious control. And now, let's consider the plants beyond the trees, the understory shrubs and herbs, the ferns and mosses, the lichens and liverworts. These are often overlooked, but they're crucial components of the ancient forest ecosystem. The understory plants capture light that filters through the canopy, converting it into biomass and contributing to the forest's overall productivity. They provide food for herbivores, from insects to deer. They stabilize the soil with their roots. They contribute to the leaf litter and the soil organic matter. Many have specialized relationships with pollinators, with seed dispersers, with mycorrhizal fungi. Ferns are particularly characteristic of ancient forests, especially in moist climates. Sword ferns carpet the forest floor in Pacific Northwest old growth, their fronds creating a lush green understory. In tropical and subtropical forests, tree ferns can reach heights of 30 feet or more, creating a fern canopy beneath the tree canopy. Ferns are ancient plants, with a lineage stretching back over 350 million years, and they've been part of forest ecosystems for most of that time. Mosses and liverworts, the bryophytes, are even more ancient, with origins over 400 million years ago. In moist ancient forests, they can cover every surface, the forest floor, fallen logs, tree trunks, even the canopy branches. They create a spongy layer that holds moisture, moderating the forest microclimate. They provide habitat for countless tiny invertebrates. They capture nutrients from rain and fog, making them available to the forest ecosystem. In some temperate rainforests, The biomass of mosses and liverworts can rival that of the trees themselves. Lichens, which are not plants but symbiotic associations between fungi and algae or cyanobacteria, are also characteristic of ancient forests. They grow on tree bark, on rocks, hanging from branches. Some species are found only in old-growth forests, requiring the stable conditions and the specific bark chemistry of ancient trees. Lichens are important food sources for some animals, and they contribute to nutrient cycling, particularly nitrogen. Some lichens can fix nitrogen from the air, converting it into forms that can be used by plants, representing an important input of this often limiting nutrient into the forest ecosystem. All of these plants and plant-like organisms contribute to the forest's complexity, its productivity, its resilience. They fill niches, they create habitat, they cycle nutrients, they stabilize the soil. The ancient forest is not just trees. It's a community of thousands of species, each playing a role, each connected to countless others through webs of relationship and interdependence. Let this image settle in your mind. The ancient forest as a tapestry, woven from thousands of threads, each thread a species, each species connected to others through relationships of eating and being eaten, of competition and cooperation, of dependence and mutual benefit. Pull on any thread, and the whole tapestry shifts. Remove a thread, and the pattern changes. The forest is not a collection of independent parts. It's an integrated whole, where every part affects every other part. Your breath continues, weaving its own pattern, in and out, connecting you to the air around you, to the oxygen produced by plants, to the carbon dioxide that plants need. You are part of the tapestry too, connected to the forest, to all life, through the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food you eat. The boundaries between self and world are more permeable than they seem. The ancient forest, for all its resilience, is not immune to change. Disturbances come, as they always have, but the nature and intensity of disturbances are changing in our modern world. Climate change, invasive species, altered fire regimes, air pollution, fragmentation, these are challenges that ancient forests face, challenges that test their resilience in new ways. Let's explore these challenges, not to create anxiety, but to understand, to appreciate the forest's resilience, and to recognize the importance of protecting and supporting these remarkable ecosystems. Climate change is perhaps the most pervasive challenge. As global temperatures rise, as precipitation patterns shift, as extreme weather events become more frequent, forests are responding. Some species are shifting their ranges, moving upslope or poleward to track suitable climate conditions. Some are experiencing increased stress, with drought and heat making them more vulnerable to insects and disease. Some are experiencing changes in their seasonal rhythms, with earlier spring growth, later fall senescence, longer growing seasons. Ancient forests, with their long-lived trees, are particularly vulnerable to rapid climate change. A tree that germinated 200 years ago did so in a climate that may be quite different from today's climate, and very different from the climate projected for the end of this century. The tree cannot move. It must adapt in place, or it will die. But ancient forests also have resilience. Their structural complexity creates microclimates, with cooler, moister conditions beneath the canopy that can buffer against temperature extremes. Their deep soils hold more water, providing reserves during drought. Their genetic diversity, accumulated over centuries of reproduction, provides raw material for adaptation, and their mycorrhizal networks may help them cope with stress, potentially allowing some resource redistribution. Research is ongoing to understand how ancient forests will respond to climate change. Some studies suggest that old-growth forests may be more resilient than younger forests, better able to withstand drought and heat stress. Other studies suggest vulnerability, particularly for species at the edges of their climate ranges. The truth is likely complex, varying by species, by location, by the specific nature of the climate changes experienced. But one thing is clear: protecting ancient forests is crucial for climate mitigation. These forests store enormous amounts of carbon, and protecting them keeps that carbon out of the atmosphere. Research from the 2008 Nature study by Louisart and colleagues found that old-growth forests can continue to accumulate carbon, though the exact rates and mechanisms continue to be studied and debated in the scientific community. What's certain is that the carbon stored in ancient forests, in their large trees, deep soils, and massive logs, represents centuries of accumulation that would be released if these forests were disturbed. Let your breath slow here, imagining each exhale as carbon dioxide, each inhale as oxygen. The forest breathes too, in its own way, taking in carbon dioxide during photosynthesis, releasing oxygen. Your breath and the forest's breath are connected, part of the same global cycle of carbon and oxygen that sustains all life. Invasive species represent another challenge. Non-native plants, insects, and diseases can disrupt forest ecosystems, sometimes dramatically. Invasive plants can outcompete native species, reducing diversity and altering ecosystem processes. Invasive insects can kill trees, as the emerald ash borer has done to ash trees across eastern North America, or the hemlock woolly adelgid to hemlocks. Invasive diseases can devastate forests, as chestnut blight did to American chestnuts in the early 20th century, or a sudden oak death is doing to oaks and other species in California and Oregon. Ancient forests are not immune to invasive species, but they may have some resilience. Their complexity provides resistance, with diverse native species occupying niches that might otherwise be available to invaders. Their intact canopies can limit the light available to invasive understory plants. Their established mycorrhizal networks may favor native species over invaders. But when invasive species do establish in ancient forests, the impacts can be severe. The loss of a dominant tree species can fundamentally alter forest structure and function. The loss of a key pollinator or seed disperser can affect plant reproduction. The introduction of a new disease can cascade through the ecosystem. Managing invasive species in ancient forests is challenging. These are ecosystems that have developed without intensive human management, and introducing management, even with the goal of removing invasives, can itself be disruptive. The best approach is often prevention, keeping invasive species from establishing in the first place through careful monitoring and rapid response to new introductions. Fire regimes are changing in many forest types, with implications for ancient forests. In some areas, fire suppression over the past century has led to accumulations of fuel and changes in forest structure, setting the stage for more intense fires than would have occurred historically. In other areas, climate change is leading to longer fire seasons and more extreme fire weather, increasing fire frequency and intensity. Ancient forests have evolved with fire, and many are adapted to periodic burning. But the nature of fire is changing, and forests may be experiencing fires outside the range of historical variability. Very intense fires can kill even large, old trees, can consume the organic matter in the soil, can disrupt the mycorrhizal network. Recovery from such fires is possible, but it takes time, and the recovering forest may be different from what was there before. Managing fire in and around ancient forests is complex. In some cases, prescribed burning or managed wildfire can reduce fuel loads and restore more natural fire regimes. In other cases, protecting ancient forests from fire may be the priority, particularly where fires are becoming more intense due to climate change and fuel accumulation. There are no easy answers, and management must be tailored to specific forests and specific conditions. Air pollution, while less visible than fire or invasive species, can also impact ancient forests. Nitrogen deposition from agricultural and industrial sources can alter soil chemistry and favor some species over others. Ozone can damage leaves and reduce photosynthesis. Acid rain can leach nutrients from soil and damage foliage. These impacts are often subtle and cumulative, but over time they can alter forest composition and function. Ancient forests, with their long-lived trees, can accumulate the effects of air pollution over decades or centuries. Trees that germinated in an era of cleaner air are now growing in an era of elevated nitrogen deposition and ozone levels. The long-term impacts are still being studied, but there's evidence that air pollution is contributing to forest decline in some areas. Fragmentation is perhaps the most insidious threat to ancient forests. As forests are cleared for agriculture, development, and other uses, what remains is often fragmented into isolated patches. These patches are subject to edge effects, with altered microclimates, increased wind exposure, and easier access for invasive species and predators. Small patches may not be large enough to support species that require large territories, like spotted owls or cougars. Isolated patches may not be able to exchange genes with other populations, leading to inbreeding and loss of genetic diversity. Ancient forests, which once covered vast areas, are now often reduced to small, isolated patches. In the Pacific Northwest, less than 10% of the original old-growth forest remains, and much of that is fragmented. In Europe, ancient forests are even more rare, with only tiny remnants remaining in a few protected areas. This fragmentation makes ancient forests more vulnerable to all the other threats we've discussed: climate change, invasive species, fire, pollution. Protecting and connecting ancient forest patches is crucial for their long-term survival. This can involve protecting corridors of forest between patches, allowing animals to move and genes to flow. It can involve restoring degraded forests adjacent to ancient forest patches, creating larger blocks of habitat. It can involve managing the landscape matrix around ancient forests to be more hospitable, with less intensive land uses that create softer edges. But even in the face of these challenges, ancient forests show remarkable resilience. They recover from disturbances. They adapt to changing conditions. They persist, sometimes against considerable odds. This resilience comes from their complexity, their diversity, their deep roots, both literal and figurative, in the landscape. Let your awareness rest on this resilience. Notice how your own body is resilient, how it heals from injuries, how it adapts to changing conditions, how it maintains itself day after day, year after year. You don't have to think about this resilience. It's built into your biology, the result of millions of years of evolution. The forest's resilience is similar, built into its ecology, the result of millions of years of evolution and centuries of development in this particular place. Take a deep breath, filling your lungs completely. Hold it for a moment, feeling the fullness, the potential. Then release, slowly and completely, letting go of any tension, any worry. The forest breathes too, in its own way, taking in and releasing, holding and letting go, in rhythms that span seasons and years and centuries. After disturbance comes renewal. This is one of the fundamental rhythms of the forest, the cycle of death and rebirth, of destruction and creation, of ending and beginning. The ancient forest is not static, frozen in time. It's dynamic, constantly cycling through phases of growth and decay, disturbance and recovery. We've already explored how individual trees cycle through life stages, from seed to seedling to mature tree to snag to log. But the forest as a whole also cycles, with disturbances creating openings that are gradually filled through succession, eventually returning to old growth conditions. The time scale of these cycles varies depending on the type and intensity of disturbance and the characteristics of the forest. A small gap created by the death of a single tree might be filled within decades, as surrounding trees expand their crowns and understory trees grow up to fill the space. A larger disturbance, like a severe windstorm that topples many trees or a fire that kills most of the canopy, might take centuries to recover to old growth conditions. But recovery does happen. The forest has mechanisms for renewal built into its ecology. Seeds germinate in the disturbed area. Surviving trees resprout. The mycorrhizal network, protected in the soil, helps new seedlings establish. Slowly, patiently, the forest rebuilds. Let's trace this process, imagining a moderate disturbance in an ancient forest. Perhaps a windstorm has toppled a group of trees, creating a gap of an acre or so in the canopy. The fallen trees lie crisscrossed on the forest floor, their roots torn from the ground, creating pits and mounds in the soil. Suddenly, full sunlight reaches the forest floor in this area, perhaps for the first time in centuries. The response is immediate. Seeds that have been lying dormant in the soil, waiting for light, germinate. These are often pioneer species, adapted to colonize disturbed areas. Within weeks, the gap is green with seedlings. Shrubs that were suppressed in the shade of the canopy suddenly grow vigorously, their branches spreading to capture the available light. Herbs and ferns proliferate. But beneath this burst of growth, the fallen trees are beginning their slow transformation. Fungi colonize the dead wood, beginning the process of decomposition. Insects bore into the bark and wood, creating galleries and chambers. Salamanders and small mammals take shelter beneath the logs. The logs are becoming habitat, becoming part of the forest floor, beginning their decades-long journey back to soil. Years pass. The pioneer seedlings grow into saplings, then young trees. They're growing quickly in the abundant light, but they're also competing intensely with each other and with the shrubs and herbs. Some will survive this competition. Most will not. This is the sorting process, the way the forest selects for the individuals best adapted to the conditions of this particular site. Meanwhile, seedlings of the climax species, the long-lived trees that will eventually dominate the canopy, are also establishing. They're growing more slowly than the pioneers, but they're more shade-tolerant, able to persist beneath the pioneer canopy. They're playing the long game, waiting for their opportunity. Decades pass. The pioneer trees are now mature, their crowns forming a canopy over the gap. The light reaching the forest floor has diminished. The shrubs and herbs that proliferated in the early years are now declining, unable to compete in the shadier conditions. The climax species seedlings and saplings are growing steadily, waiting. The fallen logs are now well into their decay process. The bark has fallen off. The wood is soft and punky, easily crumbled. They're covered with moss and ferns, and seedlings are germinating on them, using them as nurse logs. The logs are releasing nutrients back into the soil, feeding the next generation of trees. A century passes. The pioneer trees are beginning to die, their relatively short lifespans coming to an end. As they fall, they create smaller gaps, and the waiting climax species respond, accelerating their growth, filling the spaces. The canopy is becoming more complex, with multiple layers, with trees of different ages and sizes. 200 centuries after the original disturbance, the gap has largely closed. The canopy is once again dominated by climax species, by long-lived trees that will stand for centuries more. The structure is complex, with multiple layers, with snags and logs in various stages of decay. The mycorrhizal network has re-established, connecting the trees. The forest has returned to old growth conditions. But it's not exactly the same as it was before the disturbance. The specific individuals are different. The exact spatial arrangement is different. Perhaps the species composition is slightly different, with some species more abundant and others less so. The forest has renewed itself, but with variation, with novelty. This is how forests maintain diversity over time, through cycles of disturbance and recovery that create a shifting mosaic of conditions across the landscape. Let your breath mirror this cycle. Breathe in, like the forest drawing in light and water and nutrients, building and growing. Hold for a moment, like the mature phase of the forest, stable and productive. Then breathe out, releasing, like the forest releasing leaves and seeds and eventually the trees themselves, letting go, making space for renewal. And then breathe in again, the cycle continuing, endless and natural. This cycle of disturbance and renewal is not something to fear or to prevent. It's a natural part of forest ecology, a source of diversity and resilience. The ancient forest is not fragile, not something that will shatter at the slightest touch. It's resilient, adapted to disturbance, capable of recovery. What threatens ancient forests is not natural disturbance but the loss of the capacity for recovery. When forests are clear-cut and the soil is compacted and the mycorrhizal network is disrupted and the seed sources are removed, recovery is much slower and may not lead back to old growth conditions. When forests are fragmented and isolated, recovery is impaired because species can't recolonize from nearby areas. When climate is changing rapidly, recovery may lead to a different type of forest, adapted to the new conditions rather than the old. But where the capacity for recovery remains, where the biological legacies are intact, where the landscape context is favorable, ancient forests show remarkable ability to renew themselves. This is cause for hope, for optimism, for appreciation of the resilience of nature. And it's a reminder that we are part of these cycles too. Our bodies are constantly renewing themselves, with cells dying and being replaced, with tissues being broken down and rebuilt. We cycle through phases of activity and rest, of waking and sleeping, of growth and maintenance. We are not static, not fixed. We are dynamic, constantly changing, constantly renewing ourselves. Let this understanding settle into your body. Feel how relaxed you are now, how deeply at rest. This rest is not inactivity. It's renewal. Your body is using this time to repair, to restore, to prepare for the next cycle of activity. Sleep is not the absence of life. It's a different phase of life, equally important, equally vital. The forest rests too, in its own way. In winter, in temperate and boreal forests, growth slows or stops. The trees are dormant, conserving energy, waiting for spring. But even in dormancy, processes continue. Roots still absorb water and nutrients, though more slowly. The mycorrhizal network remains active. Decomposition continues in the soil, though at a slower pace. The forest is resting, but it's also preparing, building reserves, getting ready for the burst of growth that will come with spring. And then spring comes, and the cycle begins again. Buds swell and burst. Leaves unfurl. Flowers bloom. Birds return from migration and begin nesting. The forest comes alive with activity, with growth, with reproduction. This is the renewal, the rebirth, the beginning of a new cycle. Let yourself rest in this understanding, in this appreciation of cycles, of renewal, of the way endings are also beginnings. Your breath continues, cycling in and out. Your heart continues, beating in its steady rhythm. And somewhere, in an ancient forest, a seed is germinating, a tree is growing, a log is decomposing, a bird is singing. The cycles continue, endless and beautiful, requiring no effort, no conscious direction. They simply are, the way things are, the way things have always been, the way things will continue to be. We've journeyed deep into the ancient forest, exploring its formation, its structure, its hidden networks, its diverse inhabitants, its challenges, its cycles of renewal. Now, as our journey nears its end, let's step back and appreciate the forest as a whole, as an integrated system, as a living example of balance and harmony. The ancient forest is a study in balance, not a static balance, not a frozen equilibrium, but a dynamic balance, a constant adjustment and readjustment of countless processes and relationships. Trees grow and die. Nutrients cycle from soil to plant to animal and back to soil. Energy flows from sun to plant to herbivore to carnivore to decomposer. Water moves from soil to root to leaf to atmosphere and back to soil as rain. Carbon cycles between atmosphere and forest, stored in wood and soil, released through respiration and decomposition. All of these processes are interconnected, each affecting the others, creating feedback loops and cascading effects. The forest is not a machine with separate parts. It's an organism, or perhaps a superorganism, where every part is connected to every other part, where the whole is genuinely greater than the sum of its parts. This integration is the result of millions of years of evolution, of species adapting to each other and to their environment, of relationships being refined and optimized. And it's the result of centuries of development in this particular place, of the accumulation of biological legacies, of the building of complexity upon complexity. The ancient forest shows us what's possible when systems have time to develop, when relationships have time to deepen, when complexity has time to emerge. It shows us the power of interconnection, of cooperation, of mutual support. It shows us that competition is not the only force shaping life, that cooperation and mutualism are equally important, perhaps more important. The mycorrhizal network, connecting tree to tree, is an example of this interconnection. While recent scientific debates have questioned the extent of resource sharing through these networks, what remains clear is that these fungal connections exist, that they link trees throughout the forest, and that they represent millions of years of coevolution between plants and fungi. Whether the primary beneficiary is the fungus, the tree, or both, the network itself represents a form of biological integration that adds to the forest's complexity and potentially its resilience. And this cooperation extends beyond trees and fungi. Birds disperse seeds and control insects. Small mammals disperse fungal spores and mix soil. Large mammals transport nutrients and create disturbances that promote diversity. Insects pollinate flowers and decompose dead material. Every species contributes to the functioning of the whole, and every species benefits from that functioning. This is the harmony of the ancient forest, not a harmony of silence and stillness, but a harmony of countless voices and movements, all contributing to a greater whole. It's like a symphony, with each instrument playing its part, sometimes in unison, sometimes in counterpoint, creating a sound that is far more beautiful and complex than any single instrument could produce alone. Let this harmony wash over you. Let yourself be part of it, connected to it through the air you breathe, the water in your body, the food you've eaten that came ultimately from plants, from photosynthesis, from the sun. You are not separate from nature, not separate from the forest. You are part of it, part of the great web of life that connects all living things. Your breath continues, soft and slow. Your heartbeat continues, steady and calm. And in your mind's eye, you can see the forest, the ancient trees reaching toward the sky, their roots reaching into the earth, the mycorrhizal network connecting them beneath the soil, the birds and mammals and insects moving through the canopy and understory and forest floor, all of it interconnected, all of it in balance, all of it in harmony. This is what the ancient forest teaches us, that balance is possible, that harmony is possible, That cooperation and mutual support can create something far greater than competition alone. That complexity and diversity are sources of strength and resilience. That patience and time can create wonders. And it teaches us about ourselves. We too are complex systems, with countless processes operating automatically, without conscious control. We too are interconnected, dependent on countless other species for our survival, the plants that produce our food and oxygen, the bacteria in our guts that help us digest, the countless other organisms that make up the ecosystems we depend on. We too are capable of cooperation and mutual support, of creating communities that are greater than the sum of their parts. The ancient forest is a mirror, reflecting back to us truths about life, about interconnection, about balance. And it's a teacher, showing us by example what's possible, what can emerge when systems have time to develop, when relationships have time to deepen. Let yourself rest in this understanding. There's nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to go. Just be here, in this moment, breathing softly, resting deeply, connected to the ancient forest through imagination and understanding, connected to all life through the simple fact of being alive. The forest stands, as it has stood for centuries, as it will stand for centuries more if we protect it. The trees grow, slowly and patiently. The mycorrhizal network pulses with the flow of nutrients and signals. The birds sing. The mammals move through the understory. The insects go about their countless tasks. The cycles continue, the processes unfold, the balance maintains itself. And you rest, breathing softly, your body supported and safe, your mind quiet and calm. The boundary between you and the forest blurs. You are the forest, and the forest is you. You are the breath of wind through the canopy, the flow of water through the soil, the slow growth of wood, the patient waiting of seeds. You are part of the great web of life, connected to everything, separate from nothing. Let this feeling deepen. Let yourself sink into it, into this sense of connection, of belonging, of being part of something vast and ancient and beautiful. There's no effort required. Just let go, let yourself be held by the earth, by the forest, by the great web of life that supports all existence. Your breath slows even more, becoming almost imperceptible. Your body is deeply relaxed, heavy and still. Your mind is quiet, thoughts drifting like leaves on a slow stream, barely noticed, not important. You are at peace, at rest, at home in the ancient forest, in the world, in yourself. As we rest here in the ancient forest, in this space between waking and sleeping, let's reflect on what these forests mean, not just ecologically but personally, spiritually, emotionally. Because ancient forests are more than just ecosystems. They're places of wonder, of beauty, of peace. They're places that touch something deep in the human soul, that remind us of our connection to nature, to life, to something larger than ourselves. There's something about standing in an ancient forest that changes us. The scale of the trees, the depth of time they represent, the complexity and beauty of the ecosystem, all of this inspires awe, that feeling of being in the presence of something vast and powerful and beyond full comprehension. And awe, research shows, is good for us. It reduces stress, increases feelings of connection and well-being, makes us more generous and less self-focused. Ancient forests are places of healing. The Japanese practice of Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing, recognizes this. Simply being in a forest, walking slowly, breathing the air, observing with all senses, has measurable health benefits. It reduces blood pressure and stress hormones. It boosts immune function. It improves mood and cognitive function. The forest heals us, not through any specific intervention, but simply through its presence, through the opportunity it provides to slow down, to be present, to connect with nature. And ancient forests, with their particular qualities, their quiet, their complexity, their sense of timelessness, may be especially healing. They invite us to slow down, to match our pace to the pace of the forest, which is the pace of centuries, not seconds. They invite us to be present, to notice the details, the play of light through the canopy, the texture of bark, the scent of earth and moss. They invite us to let go of our usual concerns and preoccupations, to simply be here, now, in this moment. Let yourself feel this healing. Notice how relaxed you are, how calm, how peaceful. This is the gift of the forest, the gift of this journey we've taken together. You don't have to do anything to receive this gift. It's freely given, available to anyone who takes the time to slow down, to listen, to be present. Ancient forests also inspire us to care, to protect, to preserve. When we understand the complexity of these ecosystems, the centuries it takes for them to develop, the countless species that depend on them, we're motivated to ensure their survival. When we experience their beauty and peace, we want others to have that experience too. When we recognize their importance for climate regulation, water cycling, and biodiversity conservation, we understand that protecting them is not just about preserving pretty places but about maintaining the life support systems of the planet. And protecting ancient forests is urgent. As we've discussed, these forests face many threats, and they're becoming increasingly rare. In many parts of the world, less than 10% of the original old-growth forest remains. Some ancient forest types have been reduced to tiny remnants, preserved only in protected areas. Without active protection and restoration efforts, we risk losing these irreplaceable ecosystems. But there is hope. Around the world, people are working to protect and restore ancient forests. Protected areas are being established and expanded. Logging of old-growth forests is being restricted or banned in some jurisdictions. Restoration projects are helping degraded forests recover. Indigenous peoples, who have often been the best stewards of forests, are gaining recognition and support for their conservation efforts. And individuals can make a difference too. Supporting conservation organizations, making sustainable choices about wood products, reducing carbon emissions to slow climate change, visiting forests mindfully and encouraging others to do the same. Speaking up for forest protection. Every action matters, every voice counts. But beyond specific actions, perhaps the most important thing is to maintain our connection to forests, to nature, to the living world. To spend time in forests when we can. To learn about them. To appreciate them, to let them inspire us and heal us and remind us of what's important. Because in the end, we protect what we love, and we love what we know, what we experience, what touches our hearts. The ancient forest, with its beauty and complexity and timelessness, has the power to touch hearts, to inspire love, to motivate protection. Let yourself feel that love now. Love for the ancient trees, standing patient and strong. Love for the hidden network beneath the soil, connecting everything. Love for the countless creatures that make the forest their home. Love for the cycles of growth and decay, disturbance and renewal. Love for the balance, the harmony, the integration of it all. This love is not sentimental or abstract. It's grounded in understanding, in appreciation, in direct experience, even if that experience is imagined, as it has been tonight. And this love can motivate action, can inspire us to live more sustainably, to support conservation, to speak up for the forests and for the planet. But for now, just rest in this love, in this connection, in this sense of being part of something vast and beautiful and important. Your breath continues, soft and slow. Your body rests, deeply relaxed. Your mind is quiet, at peace. You are held by the earth, by the forest, by the great web of life. And as you rest, the forest continues. The trees grow, adding another microscopic layer of wood, another ring to mark another year. The mycorrhizal network pulses with the flow of nutrients. A seed germinates in the shelter of a nurse log. A bird settles onto its nest. A deer moves quietly through the understory. The cycles continue, the processes unfold, the balance maintains itself. The forest doesn't need you to do anything. It simply is, as it has been for centuries, as it will be for centuries more if we protect it. But you are part of it, connected to it, and it is part of you. The oxygen you breathe was produced by forests. The water you drink was filtered by forests. The climate that makes life possible is regulated in part by forests. You depend on forests, on nature, on the great web of life, for your very existence. And recognizing this dependence, this connection, is the beginning of wisdom. It's the beginning of living in a way that honors and protects the natural world. It's the beginning of creating a sustainable future, where humans and nature thrive together, where ancient forests are protected and restored, where the great web of life is maintained and celebrated. This is the whisper of the forest to your soul. You are connected. You are part of this. You matter. Your choices matter. Your actions matter. And you are not alone. You are part of a community of people who care about forests, about nature, about the future. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can protect what remains and restore what has been lost. Together, we can create a world where ancient forests are valued and preserved, where their beauty and complexity and importance are recognized and celebrated. Let this whisper settle into your heart. Let it inspire you, motivate you, guide you. But for now, just rest with it. Let it be part of your dreams, part of your deep rest, part of your renewal. Our journey through the ancient forest is coming to an end, but the forest itself continues, as it always has, as it always will if we protect it. The trees stand, patient and strong. The mycorrhizal network connects them beneath the soil. The birds and mammals and insects go about their lives. The cycles of growth and decay, disturbance and renewal, continue their endless dance. And you have been part of this, if only in imagination, if only for this brief time. You've walked beneath the ancient canopy. You've descended into the soil to explore the hidden network. You've witnessed the complexity and beauty and balance of these remarkable ecosystems. You felt the peace and healing that forests offer. You've heard the whisper of the forest to your soul. Take a moment to appreciate this journey, to acknowledge what you've learned, what you've felt, what you've experienced. Even if you drift into sleep before this journey ends, Even if you don't remember all the details, something has shifted. You've connected with the ancient forest, and that connection remains, a thread linking you to the great web of life. Your breath continues, soft and slow, like the breath of the forest, the slow exchange of gases that sustains all life. Your heartbeat continues, steady and calm, like the patient growth of trees, marking time in its own rhythm. Your body rests, deeply relaxed, held by the earth, safe and supported. And as you rest, know that the forest is there, waiting for you to return. Whether you return in person, walking beneath the ancient trees, or return in imagination, in dreams, in quiet moments of reflection, the forest is there. It's always there, patient and timeless, offering its gifts of beauty and peace and healing to anyone who takes the time to slow down, to listen, to be present. The ancient forest teaches us about time, about patience, about the power of slow, steady growth. It teaches us about connection, about cooperation, about the way everything is linked to everything else. It teaches us about resilience, about the ability to withstand disturbance and recover, to adapt and persist. It teaches us about balance, about harmony, about the integration of countless processes and relationships into a functioning whole. These lessons are not just about forests. They're about life, about how to live, about what matters. They remind us to slow down, to be patient, to think long-term. They remind us that we're connected to each other and to all life, that we depend on each other, that cooperation and mutual support are as important as competition. They remind us that we're resilient, that we can recover from setbacks, that we can adapt and persist. They remind us to seek balance, to integrate the different parts of our lives, to create harmony. Let these lessons settle into your mind, into your heart, into your body. Let them become part of you, informing your choices, guiding your actions, shaping your life. The ancient forest has much to teach us, if we're willing to listen, to learn, to be changed by what we experience. And if you found value in this journey, if you've experienced peace or healing or inspiration or simply a pleasant way to drift into sleep, consider returning. This journey will be here, waiting for you, whenever you need it. The ancient forest will be here, patient and timeless, offering its gifts. And consider sharing this journey with others. If you've enjoyed this exploration of ancient forests and hidden networks, if you found it helpful for sleep or relaxation or learning, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you help others discover these journeys, you support the creation of more content like this, and you become part of a community of people who value nature, who seek understanding, who appreciate the beauty and complexity of the living world. The ancient forest is a gift, a treasure, a source of wonder and healing and inspiration. It's also a responsibility, something we must protect and preserve for future generations. By learning about forests, by appreciating them, by supporting their conservation, we fulfill that responsibility. We ensure that ancient forests will continue to stand, patient and strong, offering their gifts to all who seek them. So rest now, deeply and peacefully. Let yourself drift into sleep if sleep comes, or simply rest in this state of deep relaxation, this state of connection with the ancient forest, with nature, with the great web of life. You are safe. You are supported. You are connected. You are part of something vast and beautiful and important. The trees stand, their roots deep in the earth, their branches reaching toward the sky. The mycorrhizal network pulses beneath the soil, connecting everything. The birds settle into sleep, their songs quieted until morning. The forest rests, in its own way, in the darkness of night, waiting for the dawn. And you rest too, your breath soft and slow, your body deeply relaxed, your mind quiet and calm. The boundary between you and the forest has dissolved. You are the forest, and the forest is you. You are the ancient trees, patient and strong. You are the hidden network, connecting everything. You are the cycles of growth and decay, disturbance and renewal. You are part of the great web of life, connected to everything, separate from nothing. Rest in this understanding. Rest in this connection. Rest in this peace. The ancient forest holds you, as the earth holds the forest, as the universe holds the earth. You are held. You are safe, you are home. And as you drift deeper into rest, into sleep, into dreams, carry with you the whisper of the forest, the lessons it teaches, the peace it offers. Carry with you the understanding that you are connected, that you are part of this, that you matter. Carry with you the inspiration to protect and preserve, to live sustainably, to honor the natural world. The ancient forest will be here, waiting for your return. The trees will stand, patient and strong. The hidden network will pulse beneath the soil. The cycles will continue, the processes will unfold, the balance will maintain itself. And you will be part of it, always, connected through the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food you eat, the simple fact of being alive. Rest now. Sleep now. Dream of ancient forests and hidden networks, of trees reaching toward the sky and roots reaching into the earth, of birds and mammals and insects, of fungi and bacteria and countless other organisms, all connected, all part of the great web of life. Rest in the ancient forest. Rest in the peace it offers. Rest in the understanding it provides. Rest in the connection it creates. Rest. Simply rest. The forest breathes with you, in and out, slow and steady, the rhythm of life itself. Rest. The journey is complete, but the connection remains. Rest. The ancient forest holds you. Rest. You are home. Rest.